You better clean up your backyard, otherwise we are changing you, changing your regime, and I'm gonna take you down. That's what I was waiting for, and it has come at last. Yes, the French president has confirmed that the attack in Nice was carried out by IS activists, IS bastards. So at last, the bastards of Allah have struck again. The dogs of Allah have struck again. And still, the leaders, the global leaders of the West are saying this has nothing to do with Islam. Are they afraid of Islam? Is that what it is? The whole Europe is reeling in fear of Islam. Is that what it is? Otherwise, what is stopping them from saying this has hell of a lot to do with Islam? Well, if it is a strategy to control the recruitment of terrorists by the IS and other terrorist organizations, then I'm saying it is not working. It's about time we should divide our strategy into different camps. Few of us must be brought to the front, and so that we can say that this ideology, as we know, Islam, is nothing but bastardism. And this bastardism is not peace. This bastardism is nothing better than piece of shit. So let us say that. Let us prove that theologically.
But terrorism, 9/11 for instance, according to classical Islamic law, is classified as hiraba, which carries the death penalty. Well, jihad is not the same as a militant perspective. Jihad just means the use of proportional force, which exists in most cultures, just war doctrine. Terrorism is something else. Terrorism is the arbitrary targeting of the innocent in order to place pressure on governments, which is something that doesn't have origins in Islamic culture or ethics and comes out of the French Revolution and certain 19th century anarchist movements that use terrorism. Its adoption in the Muslim world is very recent and is an expression of westernization. But terrorism, 9/11 for instance, according to classical Islamic law, is classified as hiraba, which carries the death penalty. So there isn't really an issue. The problem is people in the West don't know who speaks for Islam, and in most cases they don't even think that they should ask. Islam has leaders and muftis and Islamic universities that issue declarations on these things, but everybody's very vague about what Muslims actually think. So they know about Abu Qatada or whoever, but they don't know what the Mufti of Egypt is saying about anything. It's pretty hopeless, really. But then Muslims can also misunderstand what's going on in the Christian world.
There are Islamic apologists who are always ready to point to the past. They will say, Second World War was not started by the Muslims. First World War was not started by the Muslims. Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs were not dropped by Muslims. But they forget to say now is the most important time, not the past. So now Islam is the problem, not Christianity, not Judaism, not Hinduism, because they don't have a political agenda. Islam has.
Some facts that Bill seems to love. When you hear them, it's going to blow your mind a bit because the way you're told stories doesn't incorporate this information. Did you know that only 2% of all terrorist attacks were committed by Islamic groups or individuals? Like, I can't get my head around that because I can't think what the other 98% are because I never hear those stories about Buddhist or Christian attacks.
Wake up, wake up. So how do you stop it? You cannot stop it by bombing nations. You have to rather make the poodle governments of Muslim world to be answerable to the West. So you have to say, sorry, we are going to fucking change your regime if you do not clean your own backyard, including your own ass. So clean up your act if you want to remain in power. Otherwise, the same fate will happen to you like Saddam Hussein. The same fate will happen to you like Gaddafi. We will know how to take you out.
So terrorism's a real thing, and if you want to deal with it, there's a couple of ways of doing it. One way is to stop your own terrorism. So terrorism's a real thing, and if you want to deal with it, there's a couple of ways of doing it. One way is to stop your own terrorism. When the U.S. and Britain invaded Iraq, they were aware, that is very likely to increase terrorism. In fact, that was the analysis by intelligence agencies, experts, and so on. And it happened. Terrorism increased by a factor of 7 in the year following the invasion, according to U.S. government data. Well, yeah, but it's just not a high priority. So terrorism's a real thing, and if you want to deal with it, there's a couple of ways of doing it. One way is to stop your own terrorism. That makes a big dent in it. The other is to stop supporting the sources that encourage it. Another is to just to do what the British finally did in Ireland, pay a little bit of attention to the grievances that lead people to give at least sympathy or sometimes direct support for terrorism, and the terrorists, of course, criminals. So find the criminals, apprehend them, give them fair trials, and so on. That's the way to do it. None of this is being done. Just take fair trials. There are people kidnapped, actually, they claim captured in all over the place, Afghanistan, wherever they are. And they're sent to, we know where they're sent to. They're sent to Guantanamo, Abu Ghraib, Bagram, and so on, where they're tortured brutally, and that creates terrorists. In fact, the people on the ground who work there, the interrogators and others, the intelligence people, they say that Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo have probably created more terrorists than Osama bin Laden ever did. Yeah, sure, that's the way to do it if you want. But to say that they're trying to combat terrorism is just a joke.
The same fate will happen to you like Saddam Hussein. So tell the Saudi king that you have done enough shit, you have spread enough shit, so if you don't ask to change your regime like we changed in 1953 in Iran, you better behave. And you take out weapons, you spend your bullets that you spend money on to buy $15 billion of your petrol money to carve these terrorist recruitments, because you started it, Saudi Arabia. You started it in early 1960s by establishing Medina University, by establishing Arabiat al-Islam charity organization, by establishing Islamic Bank with the help of other Muslim organizations. So you are spreading evil. You better clean up your backyard, otherwise we are changing your regime, and I'm gonna take you down.
Britain is in very real, clear and present danger from terrorism, both from within and from without. But only a fool or a knave would seek to separate British foreign policy from that danger of terrorism.
In my opinion, it's injustice, humiliation, oppression that are the most common causes of terrorism.
Terrorism that we're seeing today, I believe, is often a response to oppression. People are responding to feeling being oppressed, and one of the things people do when they get oppressed is they feel closed down. At some point, you get this explosion, this boiling over of anger, feelings of injustice, feeling of being not part of the larger group, and they act out. And since they can't defeat it by itself, they oftentimes use terrorist acts.
They don't come here to attack us because we're rich and we're free. They come and they attack us because we're over there.
And we need people who know what to do. Theresa May is a good option because at least her stance, her past proves that she is not in favor of getting any more migrants. That's one good thing. Islam, why should we not curb Islamic practices? Why should we not shut down mosques? Yes, you can say that it's a freedom of religion and all that, but my friend, there have been innumerable examples since Second World War where the Western governments had to curb on certain constitutional rights and human rights because of the special circumstances needed special measures. So special measures should be taken up. Practice of Islam must be curtailed in many of the aspects. They do not deserve equal status with other religions because they are creating problem. If they want to practice their religion as a spiritual quest, if there is any, they should do it at home. And most of the mosques should be shut down, simply shut down, because they are creating trouble. They are breeding terrorists. They are bringing in imams who have no idea what the Western values stand for. How come they get brainwashed? How come we non-Muslims do not get brainwashed? And why are you going for terrorism, a terrorist cause?
Why is America 30% white guys and 70% of the shootings in the last many decades have been at the hands of white guys? I'm not saying we should racially profile white guys, but I do think it's interesting to note that had the shooters, had 70% of mass shooters been, let's say, Arabs or African American men, I think the conversation right now would be a very different conversation where we'd be having a much less nuanced, a much uglier conversation.
No. Prove it. Prove it by going against ISIS. Prove it by talking against IS and by proving that how IS is not according to Islam.
I know somebody in England who told me an extraordinary story about how when he was only 14 years old, living as a non-Muslim in a part of England far from me, had a dream of a beautiful man who wore a green turban and had a smiling face. And when this teenager woke up, he felt that there was still some kind of interesting fragrance in the room. And he read and he read and he realized that it was Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he became Muslim and he's now Hafiz of Quran, even though he's convert to Islam. How that happened in his dream, this is part of the alam al-arwah, the secret world of the spirit consciousness, strange things that happen to people in sleeping or half-waking states, and Allahu a'lam as to how that works. But in Allah's generosity, anybody, even the likes of us, can hope one day to be pulled with Allah's net out of our dunya and given something better, inshallah.